I know I noticed some of your early work, the black and white, a bit of a gritty feel to it, a little bit of a not beautifully polished, technically beautifully gorgeous, stunning. Whereas the color work seems a little bit more relaxed. Is that my imagination?
Well, it's interesting you say that because my early work is really black and white because I was processing my own film, and film in the 1970s was as you know, quite grainy compared to what today's technology is digital. So we're going to talk about grain, but through the years I saw different films, different technologies come and go, and with this particular work, in the span just over 50 years, there are pictures made with I'm going to name the films like Ilford plus 6 HP. HP5 is actually one of my main sort of materials. Also processed in different ways. Processed for very dark places, and we used to push film. Some that was 400 ISO, which in those days we called ASA. You could push it to 1600 in order to get another 2 f-stops.
Absolutely.
And today that seems ludicrous because today with digital cameras, you can literally do almost anything.
It's changed the dial.
Yeah, that's right. And so the book goes through black and white film initially, slow films, fast films, and so on. Then color slide film. Remember Kodachrome?
Of course.
Kodachrome 64, for example. Even Kodachrome 2, which was the early Kodachrome 25, I think it was called. Extra color, color negative film. It's through the years you experiment. You try different materials. XP2 400, which was a black and white negative film that could be processed with color chemistry.
C41.
So you could take it to one of those one hour shops and get the film back right away. But sometimes when I was doing certain kinds of jobs, that was important. So I would shoot that film, take it down to Burr Street, and little shop. I think it was Annex Camera in those days. It's still there.
It's still there.
And they would process it in 1 hour, and you had some proofs right away. Today, of course, you can look at stuff like in your camera immediately, and you waste a lot of time looking instead of looking at what's in front of the camera. It's one of the dangers of today's easy technology.
We were chatting earlier. Sometimes I bump into wedding photographers, and they say, "Well, make a great wedding. How many images did you take?" "Oh, I took 6,500." 6-hour wedding. And yeah, you're chuckling because when we would shoot a wedding, the Paramount Studios right across the street was out of that. If I shot over 125 or 140 images, I got into a lot of trouble.
That's right.
Because somebody had to pay for it. It was expensive. But now, and so I asked these photographers, I said, "Well, what is the bride going to see? 300. And who's going to edit that down?" "Well, I will." "How long will that take you?" 3 days.
Well, I used to photograph weddings at the time, and we were given 10 rolls of film, 12 exposures, 120 shots, the whole wedding. So you have to time yourself very, very carefully. You have to make sure that every shot counted. And if you wasted too many shots, you get into trouble because that was expensive. And so you learn to shoot with tremendous discipline.
Absolutely.
And rigor, and in a way it's become very important for me now in the digital age, because I was trained in the analog times, and so I think I was trained in a kind of self-trained, but I was trained to think in a certain way, and that helps me a lot today, because I think today it's easy to overshoot, to over-photograph. It's easy to overdo almost everything.
Edit in the camera, crop in the camera, is what I was taught. I'm sure you picked that up somewhere along the way. And don't waste film, but capture the moment. And sometimes if you just fire the drive 18 frames per second, you miss the moment nonetheless.
Yes. And sometimes you're looking at your camera at the monitor to see what you got, and something tremendous important happens in front of you, and you just miss it.
That's right.
So that's kind of.
That's right. You watch the photojournalist click. Now they're looking down.
Photography has become so easy that it's actually become difficult.
That's correct.
It's more challenging than it was.
People miss these opportunities, but you obviously.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
I mean that it's too easy to shoot without thinking. And when you shoot without thinking, And some people shoot, like a barrage of pictures, and then they'll choose one later. You actually are missing the action. You're actually missing what's happening in front of you. So, I mean, I think it's important to know what's happening in front of you and to wait. And sooner or later, and it's usually sooner rather than later, the right moment arrives and you're ready for it. Basically, that's what, and that requires a lot of discipline. And I know that when I've done assignments in faraway places, when you have a limited supply of film, that becomes crucial. You can't waste your film. You can't overshoot, overuse. But today, if you just shoot, I would just like, in fact, sometimes they shoot 3 frames of everything, just to have more in case something goes wrong or whatever. I don't know, but it's just that this idea of it's part of our over-consumptive society.
Agreed.
We consume too much, and we also do things. We overdo things.
You still need an eye.
Clearly,
You have that. I as I've wandered around this gallery, I've been listening to comments by some people. Fascinating to sort of eavesdrop. People talk about the people you photographed in front of something, in their environment. Sometimes it's architecture, sometimes it's a room full, dark, empty, whatever. And sometimes there's architecture. Some people in it. So what's going on here? Is Vince showing me a piece of beautiful architecture where he's chosen the time of day he's going to photograph when the shadows are right, when the angle is right, and then to give a bit of a human element, some people in it. Whereas the other way around? How do you?
I always wait for the people to be. I mean, I know someone's going to walk by.
It's Toronto,
It's Toronto. It's a city, right? That's what happens in cities. And when that person walks by in the right spot, I'm there. The camera. I think that the human presence is everywhere, and to me, the human face, in fact, the human, humanity is the most important subject. The human face, you could say, in terms of, the human face is like a landscape. It's the most interesting landscape that there is. So I want to try and get that human landscape into my, architecture if I can, or natural environments. So I'll use pictures of people near a tree to denote, sort of proportion. For example, or there may be a worker cutting a branch, trimming it. That's fantastic. Because then it's part of the natural process. So it's always the human element of things that interests me more than the architecture.
Indeed, you see that. It's with that in mind, I looked at some of these, perhaps newer color images of these buildings, urban landscapes, and I couldn't help noticing these rich blacks, these incredible shadows. Talk to us a little about that. Especially here and over my shoulder. This is dramatic. And even here, where you've got this brilliant color and you've got shadows worked in between.
See, in these cases, I walk the city a lot, so I observe and I used to work the city plan a long time. So I knew about certain buildings, and I would look at them in different light. And these early ones that you mentioned were photographed early in the morning. That one in particular, and of course, it's like their frontal sun, at dawn, and at one point, the human element is there through kind of a trace of humanity, right? Well, and there's reflections. Those reflections. This is the landscape of the modern city. The modern city has a texture. The texture is really made up by the buildings across the street, which get reflected into the glass on this side of the street. And that's only possible when you have buildings like that. When you have in all the city, when you have brick or stone buildings, this doesn't happen, or it happens through a window sometimes, but it really doesn't happen. This is the building on the front, the corner of Front and Bay Street, and the old. Well, it's not that old. It's old because it's been there for 50 years. It's the Royal Bank building.
Yes,
Being reflected with the reflections of the other buildings from across. At different times of day, the reflection is always changing. It's always evolving, depending what time of year, what time of day. And I'll go back to the same site over and over again. In a way, buildings are easier because easier building for themselves, because if you go to a building and you say, aha, I should come back at 5 in the morning. Or should come back at 11 or whatever.
Indeed.
Whereas with people, you never have that opportunity. It's happened to me so many times.
Correct.
I'll go back and take that picture. It never happens again.
Yeah.
So photography happens in the moment for me. And so I usually carry a camera with me almost all the time.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And let me ask you about that camera technology. Obviously, you've processed your own black and white, so on and so forth. You shoot probably somebody on the C41. How, now that we're in a digital age, easier in a sense,
Well,
for you? Do you miss something about analog?
well, it's interesting because technology is there,
Yeah.
and you don't have a choice in a sense. The technology is invented and it evolves, and then it's how you use it. Now, the old technology was fantastic,
Aye.
but it had its drawbacks. You have to go and develop a film. You have to make a print. Nobody at one point people didn't want to see any prints anymore. In my work as a photographer, I got to the point where designers who were using my prints when designing magazines and so on, they wanted to see JPEGs. So I would have to translate my prints, into JPEGs. My black and white sort of, silver gelatin sometimes or RC prints, scanned them. So at one point you say, well, you might as well start shooting digital camera. So I don't miss that part because that part was very laborious. Though I do confess that I used to sort of smell my fingers from the fixer, and it was just incredible.
Who did?
And I missed the sensory part of the technology. The fact that you handled the prints, you picked them up out of the water. It was you were handcrafting them. I dried them by hand, of course. And squeegeed them, The water was sometimes too cold, too hot. We had to be aware of that. I could tell the temperature just by putting my hand in the water. If it was more than 68 Fahrenheit, and remember the Fahrenheit days. So all those sensory part of photography, they're gone. And so, but the other part of it that's interesting now is the fact that the quickness of it. But the quickness of it is also a trap. In my view, it enables me to photograph without having to worry about carrying two cameras, one for color, one for black and white. You say, you shoot in black and white, you shoot in color. Well, today you should fix it. Right? So you can make choices.
Absolutely.
Right at the moment. So you have these the quickness of it means that you don't have to go and make prints right away, But does a picture really exist until it becomes a print? I leave that question open. It's at one level, yes, it exists. But at another level, it really doesn't. It's a virtual picture. And so we've come to a point now where photography is so ubiquitous, or image making is so ubiquitous, I would say, that we ought to be teaching the alphabet of image making in grade school. We teach the alphabet, so you learn your ABCs and you don't have to read and write in grade school. I think that we have to teach children what images are, what they mean, who puts them there, why are they there, are they really an image of reality, or has that been altered? Today it's so easy to alter an image, right? So the people who aren't really too much aware. People in the business are, but people in the general public aren't aware of these pitfalls and intricacies, which I really think it loses as a society, especially as we get to artificial intelligence, ruling over our lives. That we are teaching the alphabet of image making and the meaning. From our children we're very small, but then the teenagers almost.
I worry about the preservation of digital archives.
Well, that's also another story.
You grab a phone, you take a bunch of pictures.
Yes.
You store it on your phone. Unless you're prepared to back that up, what happens if you lose your phone? Oof.
That's right.
Or your hard drive crashes, or it becomes unrecoverable. And yet, we can look through the archives of photographers going back decades, if not centuries,
yeah.
we can hold a glass negative. We can make a frank from that glass negative. Heaven forbid if something happens to that disc of, you know, the
2002 Ronald Reagan also, you know, what happened to that. You can,
Or the new generation of
that were compatible. You got it, since we're part of this. That's.
Whereas for this book, I read my own neighbors in use archival sleeves,
yes,
and I made some choices from contact sheets from workbooks that I had. And I then, because we're talking about contemporary way of printing, I scanned them, but I had the original negative.
the original negatives.
And there's one thing about the original negative is the imperfection of the negative, and sometimes it's overdeveloped or developed, you know. Sometimes it's scratched. Sometimes the camera, even the camera itself, may have dust in it. Okay, so in a way, that's okay because it shows it was done by the human hand. And the human hand is fallible,
imperfect.
It was today with technology, with digital technology, everything seems to be so perfect, so sharp, so focused all the time. It becomes almost like a hyper reality.
We're losing the foibles of humanity. And some of us are full of foibles. Indeed. You've done some teaching?
Yes,
A little bit,
yeah.
Students, I certainly would call you a professional. Did the students get the sense that you did photography for a living, obviously? I think the point I'm trying to get at is I think it's tougher now to make a living as a photographer. Lots of competition.
Yes.
Somebody who can nip into the local Shoppers Drug Mart or Canadian Tire and spend $199 on a 10 megapixel camera. That afternoon, they're out shooting a wedding, perhaps, and heading into the business of the wedding photographer down the street. What would you say to somebody who's maybe thinking of getting into the photo business? I mean, I love it. I know you love it.
It's a tough question because I know that if I were younger, much younger, maybe I would probably be a photographer because it's so hard to make a living. Really, it's hard to make a living because the users of photography no longer buy photographs for their products, for the in sort of publications. They often do their own, or for their websites, for example. I mean, collectors still buy photography, which is great, etc. But aside from that, what we have lost with the digital age is we have lost the respect for copyright. Copyright is very important, and people just copy photographs all the time. It's happened to my work many, many times. And people, they say, well, I found it on the internet, which is why I was a late starter in getting involved with digital, well, not so much digital technology, but the social media. Because I am always fearful that you give someone a picture, you just give them it's like giving them your negative.
Indeed.
Except now there's multiple copies and whatever. In the past, when I would send pictures to art directors and designers for their products, I would send them like 10 by 10s or 10 slides. They would then a week later they would send them back, and they were in your archives.
Absolutely correct.
And today you send a JPEG or a TIFF to someone, and you just kiss the goodbye.
A number of years ago, Felix Russo, who's our executive, organized a small symposium at George Brown College involving some photography students. And it was very broad concepts, including this issue of copyright that you brought up. And a question came up. So you've taken an image, you worked on it, changed this, made it even more beautiful than what it originally was. And up on the internet it goes, on your page, your Facebook page, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, a week or two or three, like weeks, your friend says, Charlie, saw your image on this ad. And we asked the students how they felt about that. I was expecting, oh, I'm going to sue them. I'm going to send them an invoice. Majority of the students did not react that way. They said, woohoo, I've been published. I've been featured on this, that, or the other thing. And I sort of said to them, you know, but you worked on that. This is your kind of your heart and soul, or it should be. And somebody has essentially swiped it.
And it was your bread and butter.
And it's bread and butter. Isn't that how you're supposed to be making a living?
And if we don't value certain products, certain professions, those professions will cease to exist.
Indeed.
We'll just wither away. You know, we agree that in our society we should be paying a good price if you want to buy a camera, because people who manufacture cameras, you think, oh yeah, they should be paid. You know? And people who manufacture cars, they should be paid well, right? And they are. And other professions, people who look after children, aren't paid very well, for example. You know?
Indeed.
And artists are amongst the most poorly paid as artists.
It's tough.
So what would I say? I would say have a backup
Indeed.
profession.
Indeed. Indeed. Sad but true.
Sad but true, absolutely. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I was so dismayed when some of my pictures were changed without my knowledge, because someone had a JPEG and they decided they could change somebody's shirt or hat.
You know,
And I thought, you know, it's absurd.
indeed.
But anyway, that's a whole.
Well, you've done quite a bit of commercial work,
Yes.
right? And there was a time, of course, they would hire a professional photographer to shoot their warehouse and furniture.
Yes, I've done lots of that.
Lots of it, right? But that whole process, it would seem, has devolved. You know, they'd hire you once a month to photograph new products, and then they hire you once every 3 months, 6 weeks, once a year. And then they would get the office secretary with a point and shoot to photograph. So that client right now.
That's right.
And that's sad.
And
And
it's not just clients, manufacturers of products, it's also social service organizations, like unions, for example,
that's right.
or social service organizations that would use photographic services of different documentary photographers photograph a theme, a social theme. Now they don't do that anymore. Very, very seldom they do that.
And that's a shame, because I think we're all losing them. By fluke, they may get a good photograph.
Right.
By fluke.
By fluke.
Generally, some of the material you see out there,
It's pretty abysmal, we should say.
it is.
And I think that the user of that program, sadly, is okay with that. That's
Why?
I think because
okay
we have
with
lost
such a
the meaning of thoughtful photograph. We see so many images. We don't even know what a good image is. We don't even know when an image is fake. We don't stop to think about it.
What makes a good image?
Well, a good image is one that I think speaks to you, speaks to your intellect and to your soul at the same time, and makes you or encourages you to reflect on your time on this earth, on the historical time that you're living, the historical moment that you live. I think photographers have to be cognizant of the historical moment in which they live, in a way that means to me that they have as a documentary photographer, certainly a social responsibility towards in the society in which you live, and so you use your photography in that way.
If I may interject, would that be that this very casual way in which creators approach photography today, they are indeed embodying the spirit of their time, that they are a reflection of this time of consumption, of careless consumption and production?
The age of superficiality.
Are they an expression of it? Are they manifesting that in
I
the carelessness of their work?
suppose you could say that, but I think at the end of the day, I think it's really rather useless. I think when you see an image that moves you emotionally, either to action or to thinking or to reflection, That is what a very good image or a great image is. There are very few great images. Same way, there are very few great, of anything. There's lots of people who write books, and there are very few great books. There are lots of photographers, there's lots of painters, and so on. There's lots of shoemakers, and probably very few good shoes. I don't want to, so there's the craft of photography. There's a craft. It used to be the craft of photography.
Indeed.
And I think people in your organization are so aware of
Why?
the historical society, the actual craft that we have lost. I think with the coming of digitalization, the craft has gone and has been replaced by a layer of, I would say, when you can't trust the photograph anymore, of superficiality, that's very troubling. So I look at advertising photography, and sometimes you look at advertising photography, and then you look at the editorial photography, and they're so similar. One has influenced the other. And advertising photography, of course, is very carefully
Managed.
constructed and managed to entice you to buy certain products.
Of course.
And of course, photographs in and by themselves are a form of propaganda like anything else. It all depends on the context, how you use it. And which is why I also use my photographs in conjunction with words. I write about the photographs, I write about the situation in the photographs, because I think I love the work of John Berger. And so John Berger has written a lot about photography. And he's not a photographer.
That's
He's
true.
he's a writer, he's a thinker, philosopher, poet, painter. And but what he wrote about photography and writing struck me as so fundamental. The combination of words and images. How a photo by itself is very much on its own. It's kind of it's very ambiguous. It can be interpreted in many ways.
Indeed.
But when you add words to that photograph, then you're kind of guiding the interpretation. And you're also explaining the words themselves. You're expanding on the words themselves. So he calls it another way of telling, a third way of telling. And I think it's so fascinating. So I try to do some of that, but it's a challenging thing to do. But I do think that it's very important. So you see, my book has a number of stories, right, which inform the photographs themselves.
I was just going to say, your books are not simply photo books. They're much deeper than that. They are full of spectacular photos, but words, plenty of them, which tell a story, which help interpret the photographs, but certainly they tell a story. I think if you're publishing a photo book and it's just photographs, fine,
Sure.
but what's the story behind it? And that's been the history of good photo books. Karsh would not just publish a book full of his photographs, he would talk about the subject.
Right.
He would say, this was my experience with this person. And I know you do the same thing. We were sitting here just before the interview, going through various books and saying, I know this person is this person. In this image, this person is doing this. There's a story behind the story. The photographs are worth literally 1,000 words. And then you have the words. And that is an amazing combination. Yes, sir.
So I think that we should invite members from the audience
Absolutely.
to type in their questions in the chat box. If you have a comment or question.
I think we have a comment or a question from Emma from Nottingham. Emma?
Indeed.
So, as you see, because you're talking about the fact that you have influenced many 50 years and that you tell stories about your work. Have you found that you've returned to any of your pictures, say, from your early career and sort of really found new stories in them, or reassessed the stories you were telling, or rediscovered the work?
It's very interesting you say that, because when you're looking back at your old photographs, especially if they're 40, 50 years old, and you may have forgotten the circumstances, and then you look at the photograph with today's eyes. So the photograph is still there, hasn't changed, but you have changed. And the society around you has changed. And so that by you know, by doing that, by realizing that, then you're looking at the photograph with a kind of either a new interpretation or an expanded interpretation. And I have a story in the book about called "Who Is This Man?" in the photograph, and I should tell you that story. I think.
You should.
Because it involves my dad, my father, who was a worker, construction worker,
It's a good story.
and he built me my first darkroom,
Wow, it's he's my hero too.
and so he built me my first darkroom, and my darkroom didn't have any running water, so I used the old laundry tubs. Remember, in front of houses had these gigantic laundry tubs in the basement. Two of them, and the water overflowed from one to the other.
Absolutely.
So my prints would be washing in one tub, and the water would be overflowing in the other. And I was using cold water, not allowed to use hot water. But I read somewhere that Eugene Smith said cold water is okay.
Oh boy.
So that was okay by me. And you know, in any case, that's really involving. Hot water is very expensive.
Mm.
So the prints are swirling in one tub, and I come out of the darkroom, you know, in a frenzy with the print dripping of fixer.
Yes.
In my hands in the tongs. And it's an 8x10 print, and I'm about to dunk it in the water, and my father is standing by the sink. And he got up to go to the bathroom. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, the bathroom's in the basement. And he's looking at it, he's trying to follow with his eyes, in his head, this print swirling about. And he said to me, "Who is this man, this guy in this picture?" And I kind of said, well, I stammered that I didn't know who he was. He was astonished. He said, "You don't know who this man is?" And you took his picture. And he's pondering this. And I'm still standing there with my dripping print. And you know, on a cement floor, so it didn't really matter.
Reaping effects.
Reaping of fixing, right? And then he said, "Oh, I get it. You met this man, you don't know his name, and you took his picture, and now he's paying you, and you're going to deliver the picture." And I said, "No, actually, I have to admit, he's not paying me." He said, "So you don't know who this man is, and you actually have to take trouble developing the picture?" And he started scratching his head, and puzzled, and left. Well, I didn't pay much attention to that at the time. But years later, I got to thinking that was a very interesting analysis of the importance of a photograph, the value of a photograph. For me, the value was determined by the lighting, the moment, the graphic quality, the print quality. We haven't talked about print quality, the rendition of a negative into a print, you know. For him, as a working class individual, the value of a photograph is based on the amount of labor that you have to expend in order to produce it. How much does it cost you? How much do you get? That's the value. And that's what traditional photographs were made, you know, in studios for people who needed a photograph for a particular social function, a wedding, a christening, let's say, or another you know, rite of passage, you know, bar mitzvah, first communion, whatever it might be, or maybe a big family reunion. But there were very few. Most people did not have photographs, despite the fact that we talk about the democratization. It's a big word, democratization, because democratization only involves the people who can afford it. Many people, when photography became, you know, after in the 1880s, when it became very common, very popular with smaller with roll film, still many people couldn't take pictures.
Correct.
Well,
It was beyond their means.
you know, I mean, a new class of people could take pictures, middle classes, you know, the upper middle classes, let's say. So when I was in a small village in Mexico, photographing farm workers who come and work in Canada and then have to go back to their homes. I followed them in Mexico. I think at that time, I didn't see a single camera in that village. So I was there as a photographer, as their guest. I took lots of pictures. And I went back with prints. I gave everybody that I put my photographs, a print that I had made by hand, of course, in those days, right? And so they were thrilled because they didn't have any pictures
Themselves. Or their brothers or the sisters.
And especially they never had pictures of their brothers or dads or moms who came to work in Canada. They knew that they were working on a farm in Canada, but they had no idea what a farm looked like. And most people They have very few pictures of the workplace.
That's a very good point.
No,
That's a very good
even in
point.
Canada, you have very few pictures of if your dad works or your mom works in a particular office or a particular factory, usually don't have pictures. Today it might be a little different because of the cell phone.
That's very
But
true.
back before digital, there were almost no pictures of the workplace in the family. You guys are familiar with
Unofficial, yeah.
unofficial.
I remember when I was younger, feeling or being told that photography wasn't allowed in the workplace without permission.
Right. It's a private place, right? You have to get permission.
You have to get permission, and you could only photograph here, but not there. You could show this, but you couldn't show
You
that.
could,
You became very aware of the limitations that were being placed around you,
that's right.
and how little freedom you actually had
That's right.
in the place where you were.
Yeah.
Right?
But also we accepted the fact that because of that, it was okay not to have any of those pictures in the family photo album. So you have all these, and I think your society is so familiar with the photo album,
Oh, goodness.
probably more than most people. And there are very, very few pictures of mom and dad's work. Does mom and dad carry the birthday cake? You know, over and over again?
You're absolutely right. Our last presentation by Cindy Motzenbecker in Detroit was all about occupational photographs. They are so scarce that they are their own collecting genre.
Mhm.
Victorian photographs of people working, admittedly posed in a studio, for instance, and holding, a sharp knife. He's the butcher. Wearing a bib. He's the butcher. Holding, something that says, "Okay, I'm a blacksmith," so on and so forth.
Right.
You're absolutely right. I'm thinking back to my own experience. Somewhere I had a photograph of my dear old dad sitting at his office desk, which some colleague of his obviously took. And it's the only picture I have of dad sitting at a desk in his office.
Right.
Surrounded by, colleagues and friends. But again, this would have been from the 60s, probably early 70s.
And I would say that even office work would be probably a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Someone sitting behind the desk to photograph than an automaker.
Right.
Or a construction worker, or a welder,
Well,
a miner, unless it was a professional
yes.
photographer going in for a specific project,
And examples of that are actually very scarce. Atlas Steel, again, our old friend Joseph Park went in, photographed Ford for their annual report, and those are iconic images. A guy sweating, in a steel mill, a guy sweating on the assembly line. That's material from the 50s and 60s.
Right.
Nobody else did that. Right. Who wants to see some guy sweating in a mine?
Right. I've done some of that in some of my side.
Indeed.
The notion of work in photography, something that interests me a lot. And
Absolutely.
I'm actually doing a lot of research in the history of photography. The whole concept of work.
And work?
Yeah.
Would that maybe be a publication?
Yes, it would.
That's brilliant.
That.
I love this. I'm going to show Emma this. Emma's not from Toronto. The title here is not paved with gold. This is part of an expression. So at one point, at a number of points, Canada's always looking for people. It's a big country, lots of space in between everything. So please come to Canada. And there was a notion that Italian people were known, for better or for worse, as construction workers, right? Or they should come to Canada. And come to Canada, the streets are paved with gold. That was the notion, right? And so and it worked. A lot of people came from all parts of Europe, all parts of certainly Italy, up and down the street here. And they discovered a number of things. First of all, they discovered that the streets were not paved with gold. Then they discovered in a lot of cases the streets were not paved, period. And the next thing that they discovered was they were expected to pave them. Right? So that is.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a very fundamental part of immigration. And to me, that is an analysis of immigration. That's a working class analysis. It's an analysis of immigration that talks about work. People coming to Canada, or as they said, So the promised land, which included the United States, in fact, the expression goes back to an American expression. Because the word America was a metaphor for the sort of for paradise, kind of thing. But it's a kind of analysis that we don't find too often. And I was drawn to that because as an immigrant, I also was a young man. I was dealing with my own immigrant sort of conflicts, and was I Vincenzo? Was I Vincent? And I'm still not sure sometimes. And,
Yeah, how did you navigate that?
yeah, it's complicated.
That's something that I go through, and I've been going through. I came here at age 14,
Well, okay.
and I know my name,
I was
Stelio,
11.
right?
I was 11.
And you already know the way that your parents have called you. And then, I mean, at one point, people were forcing the name Sal on me.
Of course.
I didn't like that at all. And I resisted, and they
It
didn't
sounds
like it.
very different from Salem.
Absolutely. But it was easy for them to say and remember,
Right.
even though it's not my name.
Right. Yeah.
Did you ever come across situations like that?
Well, I know because my name was translatable. I think Salem is not as easily translatable into English. So my name became Vincent, and I don't see myself as Vincent. And became Vince because Vince was easier to deal with
Mhm.
as a short name, but when I sometimes in the United States people call me Vinny. But when I made a petition long ago that whenever as an artist, I would be known as Vincenzo. And so whenever I applied for the council, all those things that you always do, apply for grants, etc. Whenever I had shows, I was always Vincenzo Pietropaolo. And some people, in the early days, they had difficulty pronouncing my name, especially my last name.
Oh, I love your last name.
Well,
Because it's,
I love it too, thank you.
Peter and Paul, the two evangelists, or
Well, it's
the apostles that went out to.
Every name, if you pronounce it properly, every name, and if you pronounce the name properly, you're actually showing respect for the people that you're talking to, the person you're talking to, right? As opposed to saying, I can't say your name, so I'll call you. Your name is George, but I can't pronounce that, so I'll call you Bill. Well, that's kind of absurd, right? And especially in Canada, where we have such a myriad variety of names. I mean, I think we're getting a lot better.
We are.
We are. And we're
Thankfully, we
very
are.
and even other countries are much more. They're much more emphatic about changing your name. than
Well,
we have.
My son's name is also Celio. And in school, everybody pronounces his name right.
Good.
Then they talk to me, and they don't know how to say my name. They know how to say his.
Very, very interesting. Isn't
I was like,
that
same one.
Isn't that fascinating? But that's when you're an immigrant, you got to deal with those things, right? Sometimes you got to deal with other more profound things like racism. In my case, I didn't have to deal with that, except in very minor ways. But I would say not in a big serious way. But I would, certainly stereotypes. If you're Italian, or I was photographing workers, and someone said to me one time ago that I shouldn't be applying to the Interior Council. I should be applying to the Ministry of Labor for a grant, because my subject matter was workers. And it was also with my name being what it is. So you start to say, is it because of my name? Is it because of my subject matter? But you kind of you go through all this thinking process when you're young. I have to learn English, of course. I can speak English, so learning English. Anyway, photography provided for me a means of expression.
Absolutely.
So coming to terms with my own reality as an immigrant, and so it's intrinsically part of my being. Basically, immigration and photography for me are totally married together. My first work was about immigration, so I was drawn naturally to photograph other immigrants, many of whom you see in that book, the 50-year book, right? Also, or the harvest polluters, the migrant farm workers, who aren't even immigrants; those are migrant workers, they're guest workers. But so when I was talking to them, and I interviewed them at length, and I followed them in their homes in Mexico, in Jamaica, in Montserrat. This is the countries where they were principally coming from. And when I followed them there, I realized that these people are just giving so much of themselves. They're leaving their families for 6 months of the year, and maybe 8 months sometimes, year after year after year after year, 20 years, sometimes 30 years or longer, in order to get a job, in order to work. But they don't have the right to stay in this country, right? Whereas at least with me as a landed immigrant, that was not a problem. So I was drawn to that kind of, drawn to explore
Mm.
those issues, which,
In your book, I saw a couple of pictures in which you photographed indigenous people in a parent celebration, dance.
yeah,
How do you see your experience as an immigrant and the way that it intersected with indigenous people
Well,
there?
I think you begin with the notion of respect for the other. And especially if you're a photographer, the camera is a very powerful tool. You have to have respect for the person in front of your camera. That's the first step. Second step is I thought I should go and meet some indigenous people. You know, you live in Toronto, and I hadn't met any except for front group, you know. So I went to a sunrise ceremony inside of the circle. The hardest part was to cross the leg, to sit cross-legged.
Mm.
Inside the circle, no camera. I mean,
Mm.
some things you can't photograph, and you respect them. And I smoked a peace pipe. And I thought that was kind of a very interesting moment to be there, to be accepted by that elder
Mm.
who was officiating. And it was right at the underneath the Garden Expressway, such an ironic spot
Hmm.
to
Mm.
do that. And then there was a festival. And I decided to photograph them the way that I saw them. And so I photographed them in the performance of their rituals. One point they announced from this point on, cameras are permitted. And that's what that picture that you're referring to, I think, the one with the dancer.
Yes, yes, in the red
But
costume.
there's also another one with another indigenous person who's holding, I think, it's an eagle feather. And, you know, sort of in a kind of almost aggressive action. But there's a sea tower in the background.
Mhm.
You could also read that in different ways. So that's why photography is so fascinating, because it can be read at different levels, different layers. That could be a picture of resistance,
Mm.
for example. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Big Emma from Nottingham had a question.
Well, I was going to say it's really interesting because as that conversation evolved, you were answering a lot of things I wanted to say. But because one of the images that I was really drawn to was the one that you got the two ladies there.
Yeah.
And I thought what was so powerful was that in some ways that subject matter. It's as well, right? It's people are very particular things to which is very empathetic and very interesting to see. I was just wondering whether you could talk through how you were able to capture that image, because I think there's a real richness and a real humanness in your smile and in that kind of, you know, and again, even though, you know, often with pictures of working class people, it's that idea of, you know, very much focused on them as objects that work. You've got a real human touch here.
Well, that certainly is one of my favorite pictures. And it's from Cuba, from Havana. And I was just walking down the street and I saw those two women workers who were resting, taking a break. And I said hello to them. And I chit-chatted with them a little bit. And I asked them, may I take a picture? And they said, yes, you may. And when you get to that point, you don't just show up and start photographing, quickly. You talk to people, you create a rapport as much as you can. And so when you have that rapport created, when you have that rapport and people respond, and when you photograph people, with a short lens, for those who are not photographers, let's say normal lens, a 50mm lens or a 28mm, whatever, 35mm, you're very close to people.
Mhm.
So if you're not being sincere, I think people can tell. If they ask you, why are you taking this picture? And if you give them a kind of a blasé answer, they won't respond. But once they trust you, building up that trust. Once they trust you, the picture is there.
Mhm.
It's for you to receive it.
Mhm.
You have to know how to receive it. It's almost like harvesting a poetry.
Mhm.
I think that's what, so the people, I don't ask people to pose for me. I don't say, I just say to that woman on the right, place your room in the from that answer. I just say, look at me. And so they're looking at me, and I photograph them at the same eye level. And I'm about maybe 3 feet away from me. I'm very close to them. So I think the creation So that human contact is very important. And then you don't need to shoot, 45 minutes.
How much? Because you said there was getting that those moments of composition, like you say, making sure that the eyelines are correct, closest is correct.
And there's a dynamic in photograph that occurs, In this case, there's three people involved, myself and the two women in front of the camera. So they're reacting towards each other.
Yeah.
And towards each other as they react to me at the same time. So there's that three-way, dynamism, which I think that it's never predictable. It always changes with every situation, with every place you go to. But yeah, I think that's it's a way, it's a way of there's a man reading the paper there, a newspaper, get a photograph.
Yes, that's another.
And that was a very important event in Cuba, was the visit by a Pope, back in 1998. And they placed the Pope on the front page of the Communist newspaper. And that was fascinating, driving. It's official order of the Communist Party of Cuba. When I saw the man reading the paper, I was walking down the street and I saw him. And I said, I paused and I said, "Good morning." And he said, "Good morning, sir." I said, he said, hello. He said, "No." I said, "May I take a picture?" And he nodded. He didn't look up, he just nodded and I took the picture. Then I walked on. I didn't have two frames.
You say that, you seem kind of,
Well, I said it in Spanish.
see,
Okay, so that's also important.
but you, yes, of course, but you approached this gentleman, there he was reading the newspaper, you took 2 or 3 frames, away you went. But if you think about the composition of that image in particular,
Exactly.
so many, like all the rest of it, look at that depth, look at that corridor behind him, look at the dimensionality, there's a foreground, a middle ground, a background, it's just the composition there, it's just outrageous.
Shadow.
Oh my
You
goodness.
gotta be aware of both the limitations and the power of your lens.
That's correct.
So you gotta be aware of what's gonna be in focus and what's gonna be in the corner. So that if you notice the black frame, or which is the rebate from the white part of the frame for the film. All photographers will understand that. So that's the full frame that was in the camera.
So you dropped it.
And had not been the full frame, then you say, I'm gonna crop a bit. How do you crop that? And you crop it half an inch on this side. And when you start doing that, you start playing around too much. And so you accept the imperfections even of your composition. And you can look at not that I should compare myself with people like, Song, who used to photograph full frame. But you look at his compositions, and sometimes there's lots of imperfections, because life flows in front of the camera, and the camera arrives arbitrarily at one point and records what's in front of it. The photographer positions the camera, chooses the moment, chooses when to press the shutter, and at that moment, somebody else might be walking in frame and might see the footage again. And that's the beauty of the spontaneous moment, I say,
Absolutely.
One of the things I love is the edges of that. When, the what is called like the clean or the fall off of the lens, and you see that more in glass plate photography and those sorts of photographs. But there is a certain poetry in those aberrations that you see, right? That the lens creates. And I find it fascinating that we try to avoid those as much as we can today, for instance.
Or even photographing with a slow shutter speed because you want to gain as much light as possible. If you're photographing in a dark place, or maybe your film's too slow without like the man with the machete who was cutting sugarcane. So the sugarcane has not been frozen sharpened because he was so fast, and I wanted to have a long range of depth of field. So I used my shutter speed was a little bit slower than but I was interested in photographing the machete like super sharply. As long as the machete is there, because the hand action is there, it's good enough. But today, people will tend to, you can use, I don't know how the highest speed is possible today, but it's.
Well, some of the cameras today is like 1600, 2500, 4000 even.
It's astonishing, right? So You know, the French photographer Robert Lano.
Yes.
Lano, he has a book called Few Seconds in Eternity. It's a wonderful book. And I think he got the title of that book. It was such a brilliant title because he said that all the pictures in the book amount to approximately 3 seconds of time that he snatched from eternity. They're all fractions of a second.
Right, once you add them all
Once you add them
together.
up, and maybe it's 3 seconds, maybe it's 2.5 or whatever. It's an interesting way of seeing that. Which we should have done
Indeed, so many things that was good.
that.
So I thought about something.
It's the writing of one thing I want to talk about really is the writing of history
Yes.
and photo history.
That's funny. Yes.
Because photo history is very important. This photo history really, you know, there's a historian in Mexico, John Mars, and he's also a photographer. But he has written extensively about photo history. And he said that photo history really is the representation of history through photographs. Which is to say that the writing of history, not through words, but through photographs. And then when you add the photographs to the words, to the written word of the history, you create a new kind of history. And I think that it's a way of telling stories, but we all tell stories. But I think the documentary value of photography is in the writing of photo history. So even you take any image from this book, from any image at all, with that image, where that image comes from, there's probably another maybe 2 or 3 rolls of film,
Yes.
maybe more, maybe less, of pictures which were not that interesting to you at the time. Maybe it fit the purpose of, you know, what you wanted to do at the time, but nevertheless, they're interesting. Later on, because they show a time and a place. It's frozen, you know, at a certain time, certain places frozen in times. So that's a very valuable thing to have to keep your archives.
It's like looking at last year's contact sheets.
Yes.
Why did it happen? Boy, that was really good. So is that one, but boy, it's just amazing.
Well, when I did this book here, I remember, you know, can recall, there are 2 pictures in there which I had never before. They were my contact sheet. I had never really looked at them with the same eye. Not that I was doing a book, it focused my attention. Because the photo book itself is a medium. It becomes a kind of like, it's an expression of the medium, right? Of photography. And the photo book is a collection, it's a sequence of photographs that have to be sequenced in a certain way. You know, from the title you can tell where I'm going.
No.
And I'm not being objective, I mean, photography is not objective at all. The camera is, but photography is, yes. You know, and so the sequencing, the size of the picture, what comes before the next one, if you have any words in there or not, how it ends, how it begins, all those things go into the book. And
Jerry,
The
yes, she says, except for using older cameras, I pretty much switched to 100% to digital back in 2011. It's funny, but I've gone through a lot of older images recently, and I still prefer the film photos.
Wow.
Yeah, very much so. I'm rescanning all my older ones to put on a website, and I'm looking at these film ones, and I like those so much better. It's and I'm not sure why. I mean, I think a lot of it is just the quality of the image itself. And I have very high quality digital cameras, as Clint well knows.
Jerry, you bought a fantastic Nikon D850 at our auction a couple of weeks ago.
I did.
And then you're buying another one at the end of the month at the fair, or 2.
But I also, if you well remember, I bought a lot of old film, a great deal of it.
Film, I think a couple of lenses.
Yeah.
So is a photograph only a photograph if it becomes a tactile print or a negative? Does the physical form or the physical vehicle that carries that image, is that a true photograph that you can hold, that you can touch, that you can smell, that you can bring to life, right? in the dark room. And I have a printer in my bag that connects to my phone, and it prints out little Polaroids without any physical thing going on, without any development. Right? And once it becomes tactile, you know, even though I took it with my phone and it's, you know, a JPEG or whatever it is, because it is printed, there's a certain aura to it. There's a certain thing to it.
There is. You can feed it in your hands. And I think the old saying goes that, you know, when you open up the family, photo family album, you know that maybe married such a simple years before, right? Or maybe someone spilled some milk on it. That's not, you know, not uncommon. And those help us, those little moments, those experiences help us as humans to I think to navigate our daily lives. Maybe not to navigate our job, but to navigate how we view our life.
And how we got here.
How we got here.
Grandma's shaky hand
Yeah.
identifying these people, because she was the only one left alive who knew who they were. I see that so often. It's very important. And what happens to the ones that she couldn't identify?
Right. They become anonymous in history. Yeah.
Yeah. So many. Sad.
Also, if it's a real photograph, and you haven't been able to that still photograph being destroyed, it can be ripped in half. But you can't ever take that. You can delete it, but it's still there somewhere.
Well, and oftentimes you can even scratch individuals out, right?
Yes.
No, they'll scratch them out, or they'll write them out, they'll cut them out of the photograph.
And maybe we need these tactile objects because we have fewer and fewer. Our experiences, more and more, our experiences becoming more and more virtual. People don't even talk to each other; they text each other.
So you guys are gonna be talking to each other, right?
I'm here.
Yeah,
You know something,
right.
you know something.
Jerry,
interesting,
come on.
yeah?
Oi.
Okay, all right, you know,
Snap,
a few
top,
weeks
top.
ago, hey, there we go. You know, a few weeks ago, I should say a few months ago, my son was at a wedding of some friends of his in his early 30s getting married, and they used one of these. And they gave out little prints to everybody, to every guest who was at the wedding. It wasn't a big wedding, I think about 50 people or something. But still, they gave out these little Instax prints. And I thought, isn't that lovely? I mean, I didn't even know these people were aware of these, but these little cameras are around. And a couple of weeks ago, when I went over to Downtown Camera, and lo and behold, I found an extra wide one that they had there. And I'm not sure if it's 180. I'm not sure if it's quite that wide, but it is a wide-sized film that it uses. So I'm looking. It's made by Lomo.
Okay. Yes.
There's a whole culture with Momo, right?
Lomography.
Yeah, Lomography. Yeah, it's made by Lomography. And the film that they were selling with it, I think, was made by Fuji.
Fascinating.
And so, yeah, I've got it on my list. It's on my shopping list.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, Sylvia, if we have any others on the chat. I don't know if we do. Let's just take a moment. Plug. Beautiful book. Available where?
At your local bookstore.
Yeah, he's not kidding. It's all over the place.
Your neighborhood bookstore, and it's you know, we had a book launch last night.
Brilliant.
And I would say support your local bookstore.
That's the very Canadian. Yes, that's good. Well, I know you're working on future. Double check to see if you have anybody on chat there who's got any questions.
All right, let's see. Oh, well, yes, we have a very important chat question.
Go ahead.
And the chat question says, how do I get to Vincenzo's show in James's gallery? How do we get to James's gallery? James?
Hello there, everybody. Well, if you want to visit our gallery, we're the closest intersection is St. Clair and Bathurst, Midtown Toronto, a little west of Bathurst, about 5 minutes. If you're taking streetcar, 3 minutes. You can walk from Bathurst. There's parking here. It's a great exhibition. I highly recommend you coming to see it. We have Vincenzo's work as well as Rafael Goldchain's work, 2 top Canadian photographers in 1 gallery. Shouldn't miss it.
Can't be missed, and a top Canadian gallery to boot. So everybody come in, you can actually purchase some of these fantastic works, and I encourage that you do.
I would encourage people very much to make a bit of an afternoon of it. James, you're in an area that that's always been interesting and vibrant, more so now. I've been away for a number of years, and all these little cafes and chicken wings across the street, restaurants and so on and so forth. It's just an explosion of these places. So folks, 8:30, St. Clair West is your destination, but make a bit of an afternoon of it and bring some friends, come visit the gallery. The show is on until the end of the month. Correct.
Yeah, great coffee shops, numerous gelato shops. It's a destination for eateries and dining and walking. There's some nice boutiques. It's a beautiful way to spend the afternoon for sure. And the highlight will be the show for sure.
Absolutely. And like I say, bookmark or whatever you do, this fine art gallery, I'm sure this is one of many to come. Keep an eye on this place, folks. It's something in this area that we're all over. Just want to wrap up, folks. Thank you, Vincenzo. This is wonderful. You've always, we've always had a very close connection to PHSC. Keep in touch. We'll keep in touch. We're very excited about everything that you're doing and the new connections that we're making here. Please don't ever stop. So thanks very much. It's so good. And this one, well, folks, PHSC.ca, our website, Bob Carter, brilliant webmaster. He keeps us up to speed on what's going on in photography with PHSC.ca and other like-minded organizations. Sign up for that email newsletter. That'll drop into your mailbox every month. It'll tell you all sorts about events like this. Become a member, $35. Stay tuned. We will have other programs going into the future.
Jack Sal, June,
There you go.
contemporary artist, co-founder of the ICP's education program in New York City next month.
How can you beat that? That will be on a Wednesday, the third Wednesday.
That'll be on the first Wednesday, and this will be a live one, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, well.
So
Watch
yeah.
for details and
Details coming.
And sign up for membership. Get that journal. Brilliant work of David and Louise, our editors.
Thank you very much, everyone. It has been once again a pleasure
Thank you,
having
Sylvia.
you at our program. And please come to the gallery. Don't miss the
Yes,
show. It's fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. All right. And now, Saturday Night Live. Way. Okay. And if you don't know what the gallery looks like on the outside, then please, I think I'm locked in. There we go. I am out and about. And look at this wonderful, wonderful storefront. And this is where you can find Vincenzo and Rafael's 2-man contact photo festival exhibition at 830 St. Clair Avenue West. Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, guys. And that is it. Sayonara, kiddos.
Okay, bye-bye.
This thing evolved.